Racist cop arrests a black man, shocked to learn he's the new police chief. Chapter 1. An unexpected pullover. It was one of those mornings that looked peaceful on the surface. Blue skies, the hum of engines along the highway. But inside Officer Dan Hawkins' cruiser, the air was thick with judgment. He'd been on patrol for 6 years and thought he'd seen it all. Every day, he told himself he was keeping order. But deep down, Dan wasn't protecting the law. He was protecting his pride. Then he saw it. A sleek black sedan cruising steady in the right lane, windows tinted, polished, quiet confidence. Behind the wheel, a well-dressed black man. Dan's eyes narrowed. "Let's see what you're hiding," he muttered, flicking on the lights. The siren pierced the morning calm. The sedan slowed immediately, signaling pulling neatly to the shoulder. No panic, no hesitation. Dan smirked. Too calm, he thought. He's pretending. He stepped out, hand already on his holster, not because there was danger, but because it made him feel in control. The driver rolled down the window slowly. "Good morning, officer." His tone was polite, even warm. "License and registration," Dan barked. "Of course," the man replied, handing them over. His hands steady, movements deliberate. Dan looked him up and down, crisp shirt, wristwatch, eyes that didn't flinch. "So, where you headed this early?" "Downtown," the man said. "First day at work." Dan chuckled dryly. "Yeah? Doing what?" "Something in public service," the man said simply. That tone, calm, self-assured, irritated Dan. He leaned closer. "You people always got somewhere important to be, huh?" The man didn't respond. He just looked ahead, silent. And that silence bothered Dan more than words ever could. "Question for you. What would you do if someone judged you before even hearing your story?" Chapter 2. Tension builds. The longer Dan looked at the man, the more his confidence felt like defiance. He circled the car, scanning for excuses. Too dark tint, license frame, anything. Nothing stuck, but bias doesn't need proof. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered. The man obeyed. No protest, just patience. It was the kind of patience that makes people uneasy, the kind that reveals who really has control. Dan searched the trunk, the glove box, the floor mats. Nothing. So he patted him down, rougher than necessary, just to feel like he'd found something. "Something wrong, officer? Just being thorough? You always this thorough?" Dan met his eyes. "Depends who I'm talking to." The man held his gaze for a second longer than comfort allowed. Then, understood. That single word felt heavier than any insult. Dan cuffed him. "We'll talk downtown." The man took a breath, slow and measured. "Fine by me." As they pulled away, Dan convinced himself he'd done his duty, but somewhere behind that badge, a small voice whispered otherwise. Chapter 3. The Surprise. The precinct was busy, phones ringing, boots echoing on tile. Dan led his suspect through the front doors with the confidence of a man sure of himself. "Reckless driver," he said to the front desk. "Decided to play smart." Deputy Chief Miller looked up. "What's his name?" "Reed." "Marcus Reed." Miller's expression changed instantly. "Hawkins?" "Talk," he said slowly. "Take those cuffs off." "Sir?" "Now." Dan hesitated, confused. Miller's voice sharpened. "That's an order." Dan obeyed, metal clicking open. The man, Marcus Reed, rubbed his wrists, then reached into his jacket. He pulled out a black folder and placed it on the counter. Inside, a gold badge. "Chief of Police, Marcus Reed." The room went silent. Even the phones seemed to stop ringing. Dan felt the blood drain from his face. "You're the new chief?" Marcus adjusted his tie, calm as ever. "That's right, first day on duty. Guess introductions can wait." No anger in his tone, just quiet disappointment. And somehow that hurt more. Chapter 4. Consequences. Hours later, the conference room felt colder than usual. Dan sat at one end, eyes on the table. Marcus sat across from him, file in hand. "I looked over your record," Marcus said. "Clean, efficient, no complaints." He closed the folder. "Until today." Dan's throat tightened. "Sir, I didn't." Marcus lifted a hand. "I know what you didn't do. You didn't think." Silence. Long enough for the weight to sink in. "Bias doesn't always shout," Marcus said quietly. "Sometimes it hides in the way we justify our fear." Dan nodded once, ashamed. Marcus leaned back. "You'll take community outreach, learn the city you thought you knew." "You're not firing me?" "No," Marcus said. "You don't fix a wound by cutting it deeper. You clean it, then you let it heal." He gathered his papers, stood up, and added, "Just make sure this means something." If you were Marcus, would you forgive him or make an example of him? Chapter 5. Facing the Precinct. Weeks passed. Marcus stayed professional, giving orders, earning trust one room at a time. Dan stayed quiet, spending his days in classrooms, youth centers, street corners, the places he used to pass without a glance. One morning, Marcus called the department together. Rows of uniforms filled the briefing room. "I didn't take this job to settle scores," Marcus began. "I took it because we can't lead people we refuse to see." He looked around the room. "When trust breaks, it doesn't explode. It fades, piece by piece. Our job is to bring it back." Dan stood slowly. "Chief, I was wrong. I saw what I wanted to see." Marcus nodded once. "Then start seeing better." He handed Dan a folder. New assignment, new beginning. Dan didn't say thank you. He just held it tight, nodded, and sat down. Sometimes silence is apology enough. Chapter 6. A new way of doing things. Months later, the city felt different. Fewer complaints, more conversations. Marcus didn't talk about that morning anymore. He didn't need to. Everyone remembered. Dan changed quietly. He learned names on the blocks he used to avoid, listened more than he spoke, helped where no one was watching. One evening, Marcus looked out his office window and saw Dan helping a stranded driver fix a tire. No cameras, no orders, just instinct. When Dan walked in later, uniform dusty, he said softly, "Chief, thanks for not giving up on me." Marcus smiled faintly. "Just make sure you don't give up on yourself." They shook hands, firm, brief, equal. Outside, the city lights blinked on. Inside, two men stood on the same side for the first time. Marcus looked down at his badge, then back at the skyline. "Justice doesn't need to shout," he said quietly. "It just needs someone to listen." If you believe respect should come before rank or color, type justice in the comments. Because some lessons aren't taught in classrooms, they're learned in moments like these. If you stayed with me until the end, type the word justice in the comments so I know you believe in truth too. And if this story inspired you, make sure you like, share, and subscribe because we have many more uplifting stories coming your way.